Okay, wonderful. Well, I will then um, we'll just start our info session. I would like to welcome everyone for being here this afternoon. My name is Ella Brandes O'Neill, and I am the owner of the Boston Flute Lessons Flute Studio here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it is a pleasure to welcome the owner and director, Cara, here with us this afternoon. And Kara is going to talk to us and tell us all about Camp Encore Coda, a wonderful overnight summer camp that is happening for many, many years in Maine, not far away from Massachusetts. And Kara is going to give us a presentation, and then we'll have time to ask her any questions about the camp. After the presentation. So, Kara, welcome. So wonderful
Thank
to
you.
have you here, and the floor is yours. Please take it from here.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you so much for hosting us today. I'm really excited to tell you and all these other people about Encore Coda. Some people, it looks like, have actually been to Encore Coda before, so feel free to share. And we were so lucky to have Ella as our wonderful flute teacher for, we realized it was 9 summers.
Yes, last
Um,
summers, right.
so and it was so great to have her. So thank you again. I'm just going to take us through the slide deck here. So this first page that you've been looking at for a few minutes already really encompasses what camp is all about. We're really strong music program, but we are located on a beautiful lake in Maine, and we are very much a traditional summer camp. So you're really getting the camp experience in a musical setting, which can't be beat. So, just a quick overview about camp. We are one of the smaller camps out there. It's a really tight knit community. We have 120 campers and 60 staff. So, the camper to staff ratio is really good. And those staff members are made up of faculty like Ella was who teach, the instrument lessons or the voice lessons. And some of them are counselors, maintenance, kitchen staff. So, we have a lot of staff. Um, and campers that range in age all the way from third grade to 11th grade. We do a lot of different kinds of music at camp. So, classical, jazz, rock, pop, contemporary, musical theater, of course. And one of my favorite things about our camp is that you can either decide you want to just focus on, one genre, one instrument the whole time, or you can really try out multiple things and choose your own adventure, which I did when I was a camper there as well. And like I said, our faculty are really wonderful. Some of them are undergrads, grad students, professionals in the field. So we're really lucky to have them. So speaking of choose your own adventure, these are just, a quick look at all of the offerings we have, sort of categorized by genre. So when I first started going to camp, I played violin. So I was very much just in this sort of classical box. But the more years I spent there, I got to try out jazz, I got to try out rock. I never did theater, but I could have. And you can study multiple instruments as well. So there's really a lot you can do. You can jump around here. You don't have to just stay in one box. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what a day is like at Encore Coda. I will talk about upper camp and lower camp in a second, but for now, everybody sort of fits into this middle section. We wake up at 7:30 to Reveille, which is a trumpet player going around camp, waking everybody up, which is honestly one of my favorite parts. It doesn't get much more camp than that. We have 3 buffet-style meals a day, starting with breakfast, and then the campers go back to their cabin and clean up. Camp is where I first learned how to make my bed, so that is a great experience as well. And then in the morning, we have 3 1-hour long periods for the campers. So many of them are in orchestra or band, some of them are in musical theater, some of them have lessons or free time. But the majority of kids have a large ensemble in the morning. And then there's lunch in the afternoon, and a few other things are happening in there, which I'll address when I talk about upper and lower camp. And then in the afternoon, between 2 and 6:15, There are 4 more activity periods. They can be either musical or sports or art electives. Either way, we like our campers to have at least 50% of musical instruction built into their day. Many campers have more like 75 or 80% music in their day, but they need to have at least 50, especially when they're starting out. Then we have dinner at 6:15, and at night we have an evening activity. The senior campers have senior time, and then the lights out are there. I forgot to put lower camp lights out is at 9 o'clock. So some specifics on lower camp, which is grades 3 through 6 versus upper camp, which is grades 7 through 11. First of all, when we say grades, we go by the grade that the camper is currently in now when we place them into upper camp or lower camp. So the lower campers have rest hour every day, and that's right after lunch here. It's a really good time to kind of recharge after a morning of music and get ready for the afternoon. They have 1 hour of swimming in the afternoon and 1 hour of sports. We think it's really important for them to have a balance in their schedule, so that's why we have that. After dinner, they have supervised practice, which is where a CIT supervises them right after they have dinner, and that is really helpful. They can ask the CIT questions, and the CIT can also make sure they're practicing. And the lower camp schedule is really built in a way that they can try it all. So, there'll be no conflicts in their schedule, whether they want to try jazz, rock, theater, or anything. So we really want them to try it all and see what they like, so that when they get to upper camp, they can, maybe focus a little bit more if they know they want to do theater, or, they know they want to do chamber music, stuff like that. So upper camp's a little different. They have 1 hour of solo practice each day. And some kids like to have more, like 2 or 3 hours a day, but 1 is definitely the average. They also have an hour of built-in free time right after dinner, which is when the lower campers have supervised practice. And there is a required music theory, music history curriculum for upper camp, which is really helpful. They're put into groups depending on their experience with theory. And one other difference with upper camp is that they have more elective choices than lower campers do, just because they have more time in their day, since they don't have the required swimming and sports each day. Private lessons. Each camper gets to take private lessons on 2 instruments at camp. So when you come to camp, you get to choose a primary instrument, which you get 1 hour of lessons each week on, and a secondary instrument, which you get 30 minutes of lessons each week on. Some kids only play 1 instrument, and that's fine. They get both of those lessons on that same instrument. But a lot of people come and they want to either try a new instrument, or maybe they play something like piano on the side, or they're learning how to do something else. So private lessons are a really great opportunity to work one-on-one with your teacher. Ella, do you want to add anything about private lessons, since that's a lot of what you did at camp?
Right. I yes, I always loved the fact that you were able to choose your primary instrument, and you can stay with your primary instrument. You will have an hour and a half lessons every week on different days. And but I love the fact that you are able to choose another instrument and try something that you have never tried before, like piano or voice, which is wonderful. I guess my question will be here: if you choose like a different instruments that you don't play, like violin, do you provide instruments for that, or?
That's a great question, and it's a really common question that we get. So if it's a community instrument that we have at camp, such as a piano or a drum set, or of course your voice, which you just have on you, then you can use the camp's instruments. But if you want to try, clarinet or guitar or something like that, you need to bring the instrument with you. Some instruments that kids play are really large and hard to transport, like the tuba. And if that's the case, families can reach out and we can borrow a tuba, usually from a local high school.
That's great. Yeah, that's good. That's really great. I'm so happy to hear students can try different instruments and you can provide them the instruments. So that's great. Private lessons are wonderful. I think what I enjoy the most about private lessons is that I was teaching students from all over the country, and they came from different backgrounds. So it doesn't matter where the student is. You meet their level and you try to help them become better players and better, in my field, flutists, and help them with whatever they need help with. So definitely they learn a lot and they excel in their playing.
Awesome. Thanks, Ella. I'm going to move on from private lessons and just talk a little bit about recreation, which we think it's so important, that the campers spend some time running around and being active. It just helps create a really nice balance between that and all the music that they're doing. So on the top here, we have the land sports. In the blue, we have the water sports, and then a few sort of miscellaneous activities like creative writing, drawing and painting, and arts and crafts. And we have some other, musical electives that were on the former slide as well. Just a closer look at our waterfront because it's really beautiful. We have really great sunsets over Stearns Pond every night. So that's one of our favorite parts for sure. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about evening activities. Every night at camp, there's either a concert or a big, fun, campy activity. So on the left here, of course, we have a concert, and there's either a staff concert, which is where, our faculty and our counselors will perform, or there's a camper concert where the campers will get to perform, which is a really great way for them to build their musical confidence. And sometimes, the campers will perform with their orchestra or with their chamber group. Many times it's solo performances. So again, that's a really great experience for them to get to do at camp. And then, the other activities we do, we have movie nights, trivia nights. As you can see in this picture, we have campfires, scavenger hunts, capture the flag, carnival nights. There's all sorts of things that we do at camp. So it's a lot of fun, and it's never the same activity either. Ella, do you want to say anything about concerts while we're here?
I personally loved concerts, whether they were camper concerts or faculty concerts. It was just so wonderful to hear everyone perform, and it's such a wonderful opportunity for the students too, whether they have played the piece for many months before coming to the camp and they wanted to present that at camp. That's really wonderful, and it gives them another opportunity to get on stage and present what they want and play. And the same with faculty concerts for us. We just love sharing music and play for the campers, and just show them where they can be when they get better with practicing and playing. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Concerts were always or are always still one of my favorite parts of camp too.
Right. And the fact that you have so many different, sorry to interrupt, but so many different
No,
genres, right? You have, music, you have faculty members, and also campers are also learning jazz and rock, and you have different ensembles, right? And so students are performing solo, as soloists, or they can perform in an ensemble. They can perform classical music, they can perform rock and or jazz, and that was also very inspiring to hear for me. Like, for example, even faculty members, I'm so classically trained, but here a jazz ensemble and how they are outstanding with what they do, and a rock ensemble is just unbelievable. So it's very inspiring.
I feel the same way. I'm totally a classical person, and watching the jazzers improv, for minutes and minutes, and it's so impressive. It's really cool to see.
Right. No, really, it's totally different world. Yeah. Lots of
Absolutely.
admiration there.
Thanks, Ella. I'm going to step away from musical evening activities and talk about fun days. So, 5 of the days each week at camp are for classes and activities, like we've been talking about the whole time. The other 2 days, we have what we call fun days. And so they're a little different because the campers get to sleep in a little bit. They get to spend time with the buddy that they were assigned to at the beginning of the session. They get a sweet treat, usually an ice cream social or like a popsicle social. Um, and then there are all these different activities that can happen, like Rhino Night, the Amazing Race, Capture the Flag. All these different things are really fun and happen on fun days. And then we also once a week, or actually twice in the session, we'll take kids on trips. So we'll go to like a nearby beach or sometimes a baseball game, which is really fun too to get the kids off camp. Just wanted to talk a little bit about cabin living. So the campers do live in cabins together, which as a camper, I always thought was really fun. I was an only child. And then all of a sudden I was living with like 10 other kids, which was an adjustment at first. It was, not as quiet as I was used to, but it's so fun. You feel like you have, a bunch of siblings you're living with. But you get along with them, and they live in bunk beds. They have their own little areas in the cabin to store their things, and there are usually between 6 and 12 kids in a cabin. Each cabin has 2 counselors as well, and one counselor is always on duty at night and going to bed at the same time as the kids, so the supervision is really great. And sometimes for lower camp, especially, the cabins also have a CIT, which is another great, leader to have in the cabin. Just wanted to talk a little bit about health and safety. Safety is our top priority at camp, and we spend all year working on making camp as safe as it can possibly be. We have nurses at camp. There's always one on duty 24 hours a day. There are multiple nurses, though, a day nurse and a night nurse, and they are at every meal. They're able to be visited in the healthcare center, and campers who take medications or anything, those go to the nurses and they will distribute them either at meals or, scheduled in the healthcare center. We have a beautiful lake, like I said, and the staff who work down there are all certified lifeguards who are CPR and first aid trained as well. And, like I said, the campers eat 3 meals a day and a snack, and we make sure that those meals are tasty and nutritious. As you can see down here, once a week we have a cookout, which is a really fun night. That's always my favorite. I think that's the best food. But yeah, and then just the sessions and logistics. We have first session, second session, and full session. And then we also offer staccato sessions, which are 2-week sessions. But it's important to note those are only for beginning 3rd and 4th graders. So that's a really good way for a young kid to try out camp for a couple weeks. And they can also extend to stay the rest of the time. We have rolling admissions, although I will say that spots are filling up really quickly this time of year. So if anyone watching this is interested, I recommend filling out the online application really soon. If you're a new upper camper applying, so again, that's 7th grade and above, we will be asking to hear a musical recording before we, as part of the enrollment process. And we also have scholarships available that can be applied for. And we have a conservatory program as well, which is for our most advanced upper campers. If they want to practice more, have more lessons, do a little bit more audition prep type things, that's a good route for them to take. And that is my spiel. We hope to see you next summer. And I think we're gonna do questions now. So should I stop sharing, Ella?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And we can take any questions from anyone who would like to ask anything. You feel free to just speak out, unmute yourself, or feel free to leave a question in a chat, whatever way you would like.
So for the camp, what's your like policy or rules on like electronics or music stuff?
So that's a great question. You can bring your phone to camp, but we're going to be taking it away and giving it back once a week on that trip day, which is when you'll get it back and you'll get to make all your calls and everything. But it's really good to be unplugged for the rest of the time. In terms of keeping touch with your family, there's this service called Bunk One that we have, where you can basically write a fax and it goes to your family's email. And you can set that up with your friends as well, because maybe you'd rather talk to them. And they're on their end, it's like emailing, but on your end, it's like faxing, which we show you how to do at camp.
But like, could you, I guess, bring like something without a screen just for like music, like, and bring.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll have things around camp that make it easier to listen to music as well.
Actually, one of my favorite things was not to be plugged into the phone.
Yeah. The phone
Because
service is really bad. So even, the faculty members and everyone, like we couldn't really use our phones if we wanted to.
it really is the nature is so wonderful, and you are surrounded by lakes, forests, mountains, and the reception was really not so great. So
Yeah.
but it was wonderful. You were just, in camp at camp and enjoying the life, and you were just so, focused on what you are doing and having fun that you don't even remember that you
Yeah.
have fun.
But I will say, for the families watching, we have an office staff who are glued to their computers all day and the phones. And so we are easily reached at all times. But, just not in the fun way. I see a couple questions in the chat. For the conservatory program, what's the focus on? Chamber, solo, or orchestra? Sort of all three. It depends on the instrument. So if it's piano, it would be mostly solo and chamber music. If it's violin, it would be mostly, orchestra, solo, and chamber, actually all three. But you can sort of choose what you want to focus on for that. The instrument rental company, I think this is for the bass, and that's Acoustic Strings of New England.
Okay.
Ella, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I think my question was, if you can talk a little bit about the placement for ensembles, for example, when students, whether this is for theater or for music aspect, how do you do that, and when this is happening?
Sure. So for theater, it's a little different. So I'll talk about, the other things first. But for instrumentalists and vocalists, new upper campers, we ask for a musical recording when they apply. And then for everyone else, we ask for a basically seating audition recording when we get closer to camp. And our faculty watch these, and then they'll decide, where the kids are sitting in orchestra, or who they should be in chamber music with, or who their voice teacher should be, because we have multiple teachers. And so it's almost like The Voice. They'll sort of watch and say like, oh, I think I'd really like to study with that student. I can help them with their posture. Some instruments, we have one teacher, like Ella was our flute teacher. But yeah, that's sort of how placements work. And for theater, we do those auditions in person. That's just the way it's set up. But yeah.
And for jazz and rock ensemble, would you say this is the same thing? Do they have to?
For jazz and rock, they send a video and we'll place them according to their level.
And what is
so that they're, yeah.
And what is required to play from a student? Because you will have students from, coming from different levels, and should they be required or expected to play?
That's a great question. So we ask for a couple scales and a couple of contrasting pieces. I don't have the specifics right now because we haven't sent them out yet. But when people first apply, we ask for 2 scales and 1 piece. For the conservatory audition, we ask for 6 major scales, 6 minor scales, and 2 contrasting pieces. But we ask for just, I think 2 scales and 2 contrasting pieces for the seating audition when you get closer to camp.
Great. Of your choice, or the students can choose their own scales?
They can choose, yeah. I would definitely ask them to ask their teachers what they think they should play, but it is, they can choose.
That's wonderful. Great.
I see a question in the chat. I'll just answer real quick if that's okay. Conservatory campers also have the 2 fun days. Everybody still practices on those days. And if conservatory campers want, they can practice a little more on the fun day when they're on camp. And daily practice sessions are scheduled. So the campers will literally have a block or 2 in their schedule that says practice, and then they'll either be assigned a practice room or they can sign up to practice in a certain room. So we'll know where they are, and there's actually a rover who goes around and checks during the practice hours to make sure that everybody is where they said they would be and that they're actually practicing. Not that anyone would ever not practice during their practice hour. Wow.
Can you, yeah, that actually is bringing me to another question regarding the schedule for the day. How do you set up the schedule for every student? Do they have advisors who do that for them? And how is this happening? Based on what they choose before they come to the camp, or they choose their schedule at camp?
That's a great question. So the campers and their families receive a scheduling form in the spring, and they'll basically be a blank schedule, and they'll get to fill in what they want to take. And there are a lot of guidelines on this form. For example, if you take piano, write in piano workshop at these hours of these days. If you play a string instrument, write in orchestra. If you play a wind instrument, write in band. And then based on that and the recording that we hear before camp, we will maybe change their schedule a bit. For example, the most advanced flute players can get into orchestra, or they could even get into the chamber orchestra, which is the mostly faculty orchestra. And or maybe someone signed up for theater, but they got into the top orchestra, which meets at the same time. However, you can decide that you'd rather do theater, and some kids do that. But yeah, those are, that's how that works.
That's great. That's great.
Sorry, I forgot. And when you get to camp, you sit down on like the first day with an advisor, and they will show you your new schedule that we made for you based on what you wanted. And then the campers will be able to say, oh, I actually, really wanted to do rock band, or I actually really wanted a free period here, or, can I switch this and that? And so that's how the schedule works.
That's wonderful. That's really fun. Looks fun.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
We have another question. Can you choose who you want to room with?
Yeah, if you know someone who's going to be at camp, or you have a friend and you're both returning, there's a bunk request. There's like a personal information and bunk request form that gets filled out before camp. And so you can make a couple requests for people you'd like to room with.
Can you tell us a little bit about the cabin? You've mentioned the cabin life a little bit, but how do you group students together? And just a little bit about the cabin life. Like, is it by age? Is it by, how do you do that?
Great question. Yeah. So it is mostly by age. For example, we have juniors who are in 3rd and 4th grade. They'll room together. We have middlers who are in 5th and 6th grade. They'll room together. We have intermediates who are in 7th and 8th grade. They'll be in a cabin together. And we have seniors who are in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, and they'll be together. So that's kind of the default. And by default, we have, girls together and boys together, but we also have a gender expansive cabin, which, kids can elect to be in with the permission of their families, if they feel like that's the best option for them, or if they don't fall into the gender binary, or if they have a friend who, really wants to be in that cabin and they want to be with their friends, then they can request to be in that cabin as well.
Wonderful. That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about the staccato session? The students are coming, the 3rd and 4th grade students are coming in a little bit later to the camp. Are they?
Actually, we changed that.
Oh, you changed that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So
Okay.
it used to be that they came for the last 2 weeks of camp.
Okay.
But now they actually come for the first 2 weeks of camp because we felt like they would have an easier time making friends when if they came at the beginning. And we actually made that change because of COVID, because that first year we ran after COVID, we thought it would be a little sketchy to have more kids coming in later. So we wanted everyone coming in at the beginning, but it actually worked really nicely. And then that way the staccato campers could decide that they wanted to stay the rest of the session once they were already there. And if we have enough staccato campers, we do a staccato showcase, the night before they leave, where we get to see everything that they've been working on.
That's great. And are they in a cabin together, or you have a special cabin for them?
They're usually in the same cabin because they're the youngest kids, and most of the youngest, third and fourth graders are usually in the same cabin.
Okay, that's great. We have
Yeah.
also another question here.
Is there a max number of campers allowed for conservatory? Nope. Because, if the camper was already going to get into camp anyway, it's really just a different experience that they're going to have. There aren't limited spots. Although, for example, if you play something like oboe, there is one spot to be in the chamber orchestra because there are only 2 oboes in the chamber orchestra. There'll be the faculty member and the camper. But for violin, that's not really a problem because there are a lot of violins that can be in an orchestra.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about the safety in terms of COVID protocols, because we are still in COVID pandemic.
Yeah, I know.
How do you deal with this right now, coming out of all of this? And also, so that's my first question. Then I have another question regarding the food policies and all of those things.
Okay. Yeah, sure. We do require vaccinations. That's sort of one level of protection that we have, vaccinations for COVID. And then we will ask everybody to test, before they come to camp. And we will probably test them when they arrive at camp as well. This is what we did last year. And outside of that, we're not sure exactly how things are going to look at camp. So we're still kind of deciding what we're going to do. But last year, what we did was we were all really careful, for the first 5 days, whenever we were in large groups and inside, everyone wore masks, which was hard when it was hot, but it was worth it because, everyone stayed safe and healthy. We did have a couple of people test positive in our second session, but luckily it was, we caught it right away because we were doing so much testing. And so we were able to isolate them and it didn't spread. So we'll see what happens, but I'm optimistic that it'll be a little better by then. We'll see.
Right. And regarding food sensitivities, if you have a student who is allergic, how do you deal with it to certain foods, or do you keep an eye on that, and how do you deal with this?
Sure. So we collect that information, before the kids come to camp with our health form. And so the nurses go through all of those so they're aware. We give a copy of all the allergies to the kitchen so they know, what can't be put into the food. If it's a really specific allergy that other kids would be eating, then that camper would get their own plate made for each meal, and they, could just come to the kitchen window and grab their food. We have some campers who are gluten-free, and we have a gluten-free station set aside, for those campers that no one else can use. And in terms of dietary restrictions, we always have a vegan option available and, usually a vegetarian option too, but definitely vegan. And there's a lot of choices in terms of the food. Like there's always a salad bar at lunch and dinner. There's a breakfast bar in the morning. So there's a lot of options, and many kids can sort of self-regulate. Like if they know they're allergic to green beans, they will not eat them.
That's great. That's wonderful. I remember the desserts.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were fabulous.
There's always dessert.
Yes. That was the best part.
Yeah.
After dinner. And any other questions? I guess I have more questions. If
Okay.
that's okay.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
asking really common questions that I get. So I'm sure these are helpful to
Yeah,
people.
I guess when I was there, we had Parents' Day. So at the end of camp, we would have day of performances, and that was always so exciting. It was exciting for me as a teacher to meet my students' parents and talk to them. And how do you still have that at camp?
Yeah. Yeah, we call it Family and Friends Day.
Okay.
And it's always the day right before the end of each session. So first session ends on a Saturday. So the Family and Friends Day is actually on a Friday now. Um, and the second session ends on a Sunday. So Family and Friends Day is on Saturday. And it's a really fun day. It was always really exciting for me as a camper, you know, getting to show my parents what I'd worked on all summer. There usually aren't solo performances on that day, but for example, the orchestras will perform, the bands will perform, and you know, everywhere you go, you hear music, which is really awesome. And so even if you have breaks in your schedule, you know, you might want to go watch the theater performance or see a rock band play. It's a really, really fun day. And the parents eat lunch on camp as well. So they get kind of a feel for what it's like to be at camp while also, you know, getting to watch great concerts all day.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's good. I remember I love that. I really love the end of the camp and see what the students have learned over, such a short period of time, like 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks. So it's really
Yeah.
amazing. Um, the other question I had, um, I'm so sorry, I'm blanking out here, but can you just tell us when the student is, done with the camp, what do they take out from the camp? Like, what do you think? I don't know if you can even, um, I guess from your perspective, because you were a camper, then tell us about your experience, how you've been at the camp for so long, and this is such an amazing testimonial, and you've been actually saying a little bit that, you know, you were a camper, and then, your roles like evolved. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about your experience, and you've been so dedicated to camp. I would love to hear your story.
Thank you. Well, I started in 2003 as like a seventh grader, and I really loved music. It was a big part of my life, but I didn't like to practice and, you know, that whole thing. But I found out that my friend was going, and so I really wanted to go as well. I'd never been to sleepaway camp before. Um, and after a few days, because you know, the first few days were a little scary. Um, just because I'd never been away from home before and I was kind of like a mama's girl. But after a few days, I loved it so much and I didn't want to leave. Um, and it was just a really, really inspiring place to be. So, what I took away from it that first summer, I remember I got home and the first thing I did was practice. And my parents were like, who is this child? Like, I just, you know, we played Beethoven's Fifth that summer in orchestra, and I like took out Beethoven's Fifth and started playing it all the way through with the recording because I just loved it. So I just felt really inspired. And, you know, a lot of people who go to camp, some people continue to be musicians. Like we have some amazing alumni who've been to camp, but then some people don't, and it's just, you know, an experience that they carry with them. Um, but it really just makes you appreciate your instrument more, and it makes you appreciate other styles of music. And there's nothing like being with other kids who are passionate about music as much as you are all summer because you know, I don't know about everyone else, but when I was in school, I was like one of the weird orchestra kids, and there were only like 10 of us. And so when I got to camp, everyone was a weird orchestra kid or, you know, a weird jazz kid. Not that everyone's weird, but, you know, like musicians, we have our quirks, and it was just really fun to be, you know, with like minded people.
Right, right. What made you come back every year after that?
Well, I got so much better after the first year that, you know, you know, it almost feels like going to camp is like a year's worth of improvement because you you know, I would have orchestra once a week at home and I would have my lesson once a week. Maybe I had chamber music once a week, but at camp you have all of these things, you know, except for lessons every day, and you're just playing so much more. So the amount that you improve made me want to come back. But really, it was the friends I made. I just met the most wonderful people who I still keep in touch with now. Um, and so, yeah, there were a lot of things that made me want to come back. I didn't want to miss anything, you know, fear of missing out too.
Right,
What
right.
made you come back for 9 summers?
That's a great question. No, I just love the atmosphere. It was so wonderful. I was doing at camp everything that I wanted to do as a musician. You know, I was teaching, my love for teaching. I was able to share that with other students and performing, and I met wonderful colleagues like yourself. uh, and um, and yeah, it was just a place where I always wanted to come back and share my music and share my experience and share that with others. So, and I loved it. The camp is in a beautiful place. I am a lover of I love hiking, and I can't
Yeah.
you know, New Hampshire was so close. We just went to the White Mountains whenever we had
Yes.
the day off and hike for the whole day. It was just so wonderful, and the lake that camp is on is just wonderful. So it was just a wonderful experience to be there, and I just love the atmosphere. The atmosphere was just very inspiring, being around faculty members from all over the country and even from outside of the country. We had people
Yeah.
from Spain, and I don't even, yeah, I don't even remember from other places, but from Canada, I remember I met a colleague from Canada. So, and the same with students. We had students from all over the country and outside of the country, which was really wonderful to blend
Yeah.
out the different cultures and ways of teaching, and it was very inspiring. So I loved it and I miss it.
We miss you too.
Yeah, I miss it very much. We have actually few other questions from Paula. Are there any
Oh
COVID
yeah,
protocols from the parents?
for the parents. So the only protocols for the parents would be that, you know, it's possible that when you drop your kids off, we'll ask you to wear masks. It'll kind of just depend. Like last year, we asked families to wear masks when they were inside of the cabins and to limit the time inside the cabins to like 10 minutes. So I'm not sure what exactly that'll look like. We also asked families to wear masks when they were inside at Family and Friends Day, the performance day. So it's possible we'll do that again, just depending on how things are. Um, but not really anything beyond that. And the dress code for performances, we don't have a hard and fast dress code. We just ask everyone to look nice when they perform. You know, some people get really dressed up. Some people wear their camp shirt. You know, kind of anything goes at the performances.
Yeah, that's great. Any other questions? I guess when you are going to like when it's very at the camp when the weather is very rainy, what activities do you do for all the activities that are canceled outside, like swimming and things like that? How do you go around that?
Well, we're lucky that we're a music camp, first of all, because, you know, the music activities don't get canceled. So I can't even imagine what sports camps do all day when it rains. But, you know, if a kid does have an outside activity, we'll just change them to having an inside activity. You know, they can play ping pong, they'll play, you know, games inside, um, you know, stuff like that. So they'll have a designated location that they need to go inside. And, you know, it'll still be with the outdoor teachers. For example, if they were supposed to have swimming, you know, everyone who's supposed to have swimming will go with the lifeguards to the dining hall and they'll all play games together, which is fun.
Hmm. And how do you deal at camp with homesickness? Like students will have days when they very, very homesick, and I know there is the email exchange and fax and all of those things. But what is the support group around for the students?
That's a great question. So, first of all, we train our counselors around this because homesickness at any camp is common in the first couple days, especially like the first night or so. And so our counselors are, trained on how to respond to homesickness and what to do. So that's really great and that helps a lot. But, basically just staying busy can distract anyone from anything. And so, we'll mostly say, I understand you're upset, but hey, you're late to theater, you gotta go. And so, just try and get them to their activity because most of the time we find that it's the down times at the very start of camp where kids, start to miss home. But when they're actually engaged in their activity, they're really happy and excited. Uh, we'll always kind of check in on the kids we know are homesick in the first few days. The counselors, have a really great system of letting the head counselors and the administrators know if someone's having a hard time. And so then we'll kind of go around and see them. And every year we see, a kid is like, I'm having a terrible time, I'm so homesick, I hate everything. But then we go and we see them doing all their activities and they're having a great time. But then, they get to practice hour and then they're sad. So it's really just, staying busy, being there for them when they're upset. And we also find that as soon as the kids start to make friends, that homesickness goes away. So we do a lot in the first couple of days of camp, especially to really foster the relationships within the age groups and especially within the cabins. They spend a lot of times in their cabin the first few days just to really bond. And so that helps a lot. And we usually don't see homesickness go past the first few days. But if we do, we've dealt with it before. And if it is, if we feel like we need the parents' help or anything like that, we'll sometimes call. Or, if we feel like the kid is so upset, we'll just sometimes give the parents a heads up, hey, this kid is struggling, but we're aware of it, we're working on it. You might get a sad letter. But it's also important on the parent side as well to know that that's a possibility and not just say, oh, I'm coming to get you right now. Because that can then the kid will be like, oh, great, I'm leaving. So
no, that's wonderful. It's great that you are training your counselors to know how to deal with situations like this. And tell us a little bit about the process. How do you train your counselors, and how many weeks before do you meet with them and start training them? And are they
sure.
all musicians, non-musicians?
Yeah, so it's a mix. Most of our counselors are musicians. Many of them went to camp, and so they just love camp. They want to keep coming back. Some of them are in college studying to be music teachers or music majors, and so they see an opportunity to work at a music camp as a great time to get some teaching experience and time to practice and perform. And then some people don't play an instrument. Sometimes they'll work on the waterfront or they'll teach tennis or something. And that's great too. Sometimes they'll do arts and crafts. So it's a mix, but I'd say at least 75% of our counselors play an instrument. And the counselors all come a week and a half early to camp. The lifeguards come first. They have 3 full days of orientation before everyone else so that they can make sure that they're doing their thing and training and everything that they do. I'm sure you can tell I was never a lifeguard. But I assure you our waterfront director is excellent. And then after that the counselors will come and we'll do different sessions with them every day. They'll have meetings and we'll go over it's basically staff training, and they have scenario day where we put them through a bunch of scenarios that could happen at camp. So by the time a week and a half rolls around, they feel really prepared and really excited to meet the kids and not be in meetings all day.
Right. I think that's so important. That's so important.
Yeah. definitely. And then the faculty, such as yourself, they come a few days beforehand as well, and they are part of the really, big important meetings too. And they have some time to get ready and set up.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was really wonderful to just get head start on everything, being there a few days before, prepare, with your studio, with where you teach, and get everything set up, and get to know everyone before. So it was
Yeah.
very good to come a few days before to get ready for all the students when they arrive. We have a few more questions from Paula and I'm sorry, BN. So arrival at the airport, how does that work?
Oh, that's a great question. So, a lot of families will drive to camp, but some families live far away and they fly into camp. So we ask everyone to fly into Portland Airport, Portland, Maine Airport, not Oregon. And we have a shuttle that will come and pick up the kids on the day that camp starts and the day that camp ends. If possible, we encourage families to come the day before camp ends for the family and friends day, but not everyone can. And so if that's the case, we can bring the kids back to the airport as well. But we ask, if possible, that the flight arrive and depart between 12 and 3. That's kind of our window that we ask everyone to book their flights during. If it's a little bit outside, before or after, we can make that work too. And then the work study program, is an opportunity for upper campers to make a little extra money. Basically, after dinner, upper camp has free time, and the work study kids will stay behind and they'll mop the dining hall or they'll sweep the concert hall. It's super helpful. And they make Maine minimum wage, which this year is $13.80 an hour. So some kids, want to do it as part of a scholarship, to help get a little extra money back. And then some kids just like sweeping and they, want to do it as well to get a little bit of money. And we actually don't allow the kids to have money at camp. We give them all a few dollars on trip day so that they can buy snacks and stuff. But, there's no need to have money at camp. And so for work study, we send a check home to the family at the end of the summer.
So do you still have canteen? Canteen, am I pronouncing this right? You had canteen?
Oh, canteen, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just going, it's hold on, but I remember there were snacks.
It's all coming back to you.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is that?
So canteen is basically, we give the kids candy 3 times a week. But more specifically, there's a camp store that they can order from 3 times a week. And so they can either order a snack. It doesn't have to be candy, it could be like chips or pretzels or something. And they can order 2 supplies, such as, postcards, pencils, shampoo. It's really great if you forget stuff at home or if you run out of soap or something. After bite to help with the mosquitoes. But yeah, so that's what canteen is. I always really looked forward to it as a camper.
That's great. I remember that. Even teachers were trying to get canteen.
I know.
So, I guess, yeah, I can keep asking questions, but I just look at the time. It's 56. I guess the last question I have is for the other electives, for musical electives. Do you still offer music theory, music history, and all of the other? And how do the students choose those electives? I mean, you answered already the question that they can choose that on the form.
Yeah.
And what are the levels of the theory courses and so forth? And for what kind of age group is that?
Sure. So lower campers can take music theory, but they don't have to. They can elect. And if they do, it'll be based on their level. And, there's basic ranging to advanced. For upper campers, they're required to take music theory. And there's a block on Monday, Wednesday, Friday now for music theory and then history. So music theory, they take a theory placement test at the beginning of the session, and then they get put into a group based on their level. So it ranges from very, very basic, which, full disclosure, I was in the really basic class at the beginning. And then it gets really advanced, and there's even jazz theory that campers can do as well, which is a separate, test in a separate class, but that's an option. And then we also have started doing a music history program. So on Monday and Wednesday, for example, they'd have theory. And then on Friday, there's a history class. And they can actually choose what kind of history they want to learn. And we offer that based on the expertise of our faculty. So last year we did one about like history of rap. We did classical music history. We did a Broadway history. We did like a Latinx music history. And so there's all sorts of different options, and you can even choose a different one each week. You don't have to do the same one every week. And so that can be really cool just to be exposed to something new.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I always love that you offer those electives, musical electives. Just makes everyone so much more, exposed to so many different things at camp. You have camp, you take your lessons, you're in ensembles, and then you have all the other musical stuff that maybe you don't have it where you live at home. So that's really wonderful. Great place and resource. And the last question, can you talk to us a little bit about the ensembles that you offer? You've mentioned that you have ensembles, the orchestras, and what orchestras, and for a band, and also for jazz. What kind of ensembles do you offer specifically?
Sure. So I'll start with orchestra because I play the viola. So for orchestra, we have a string orchestra. We call it Philharmonia. It's sort of beginner to intermediate level. And then we have a senior orchestra, which is a symphony orchestra, full strings, winds, brass, percussion. And, they play symphonies and, serious orchestral works. So that's sort of the more advanced orchestra option. And then for the most advanced campers, I think I said before, we have our faculty orchestra, which we call chamber orchestra, and they could be placed in that. And for our conservatory program, the kids need to be good enough to play in that orchestra in order to get into the conservatory program if they play an orchestra instrument. And then for bands, we have, a band called Symphonic Winds, which is probably like the equivalent of a 6th or 7th grade school band. And then we have Wind Ensemble, which is like an advanced kind of high school level band. But, kids can be in these groups no matter what their age is. That's just kind of my association. And then, so those are the two bands. And the most advanced band instrument kids will get into the orchestra as well. So they'll have one day where they're in the band, and then the next morning they're doing orchestra, the next morning band, etc. It kind of goes back and forth. And then for jazz, the lower campers have a lower camp jazz band where they can, there's varying levels in there, but they sound great, by the end of the session, and it really plays to all of their strengths. And then in upper camp, there are jazz combos, which is, small groups of kids playing jazz together, kind of like jazz's answer to chamber music, or like a rock band, except you're playing jazz. And then there's also lab jazz, which is for, kids who don't have that much experience with jazz, sort of at the level of like a middle school jazz band, which, also accepts beginners. And then we have Crimson, which is a big band, and they are more like a high school kind of college level band. And so that they always play really, really fun rap.
That's wonderful. And I also remember some rock ensembles, and how do they come to life at camp?
Yeah, so the kids who play rock instruments in lower camp, they can be in the lower camp rock bands, and you can do that on any instrument. And then in upper camp, we have sort of more dedicated rock bands. Instead of just one big band, there'll be, 4 or 5 smaller bands that meet and they meet a couple hours a day, I think every other day. And I think we're going to be offering a new class this summer actually called Rock Lab, which is like the rock version of lab jazz. So it'll be sort of like a first time rock opportunity that I wish had existed when I was a kid, because I took lab jazz, but I would have been a lot happier playing rock, I think.
That's awesome. No,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. That's great. And also, I know you have a choir, and what kind of groups, vocal groups you have available for vocalists?
Yeah, so the lower campers can do, there's a chorus for them, lower camp chorus. And then when you get to upper camp, there are 3 choruses. There's jazz choir, which is really fun. They'll do sort of jazz, rock, pop hits, and learn about vocal improv. And then there's an upper camp chorus, which is like a general, maybe like high school level chorus. And then there's a auditioned group called chamber choir, which kids can audition to be in, which is a smaller group, and they sometimes do more a cappella type stuff.
Mhm. And you also offer, you've mentioned, thank you, that was really great. And you also offer a theater, musical theater. Is this
You're reading my mind, because I was like, I should really talk about theater.
yes.
Yeah, we have a lower camp theater program and an upper camp theater program. So each session, each division, lower and upper camp, put on a full musical. And it's so impressive because we're only there for 3 weeks, and that is not a lot of time, to put on a show. Last year in upper camp, we did Pippin and Mamma Mia.
Wow.
And in lower camp, yeah, it was great.
Wow, that's
Um,
awesome.
and in lower camp, oh, I always forget what they do. I think they did Matilda. Judy, what did lower camp do? If Judy's there. Judy was at camp last year.
Yes.
Hi, Judy. What were the lower camp theater shows last year?
We did Suzical, and we also did it's Shrek.
Shrek.
Oh, great. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. That's right. Yeah, it was Susicle and Shrek, and those were really fun. Yeah, Judy, there's a great picture of you from Susicle, I think. But yeah, so theater is great. In lower camp, it meets 1 hour every day, and there's an additional sort of theater workshop class you can do. And in upper camp, it meets at least 1 hour a day, and then sometimes 2 hours a day. And you can do upper camp theater workshop. You can be in a Broadway class. We're adding an acting class this year, I think, which is exciting. And also hopefully an audition prep class. So our theater program is great, but we're always looking for classes we can add to it to make it a little more interesting. So
wonderful. I think that's so important too for anyone who is really interested in acting and in performing in musicals. So that's wonderful. Have that feature.
yeah, for sure.
And the last thing, we can't omit chamber music. Can you talk to us a little bit about chamber music program?
Yeah, you could probably talk about it too.
Right, I was teaching, and that was one of my favorite times when I had to coach a group to play a chamber music, and it was wonderful. But can you tell us a little
Yeah.
bit, does everyone gets to play in chamber music, and how does this go about?
Yeah, there's chamber music in lower camp and upper camp. And by default, I think it meets an hour every day. There's also an intensive chamber program that kids can do where it meets 2 hours a day in upper camp. One of those hours is with a coach, and the other is self-directed. So it's the group working together, which is huge because, I went to college for music, and we would meet with our coach once a week, but it was so important to meet, a bunch of other times throughout the week just with the group to, really improve. And so that's a great experience for the kids to have. And I think chamber music is so important in general because it's sort of a bridge between ensemble playing and solo playing. And for kids who are nervous about solo performances, it's a really great step because you're not alone, but your part's really important. There's nowhere to hide. Of course, as a flutist, there's never anywhere to hide because there are like two of you in an orchestra. But for me, growing up playing violin and viola, you could sort of hide in the group, and it can be hard to develop your confidence that way. But chamber music is great because you're really held accountable, and you're responsible for a part, and it goes together, with the other parts.
That's wonderful.
So I love it. And yeah, anyone can do it. And the more advanced groups are put together and the less advanced groups are put together. So there's a big range.
That's wonderful. But I think we covered pretty much everything. And I seriously, I don't know where all those programs and activities and how you fit them in one day or 1 week is so much.
Yeah.
I remember it's always just such a wonderful experience, and I truly recommend anyone to go and have their own experience. It's just a wonderful place to be in the summer, and in a wonderful environment, surrounded by wonderful people and wonderful students, campers, and it's just a great place to be over the summer.
Thank you, Ella.
I really hope this was very informative for everyone, and I am just so thrilled the camp keeps thriving every summer, and you are inspiring the students. And I know my own students went to the camp and they always come back, and I can't believe how much the improvement they made over the summer. So it's like, I'm just, please go back, please go back.
Thank you so much.
So it's just, I recommend highly Camp Encore Coda, and it is just a time that you will never forget, and the experience your child will get at the camp is just wonderful. So
thank you so much, Ella.
Thank you, Cara, so much for your time and for all this, for sharing your story with us, and telling us so much about the camp and the life at camp. So,
of course, anytime. And thanks so much to you and Boston Flute Lessons for hosting this today. It was so good to see you.
Yes,
I know we've been talking a lot, but I haven't seen you in a while. So that was really nice.
The same here, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Yes, for sure. I see one more question. The kids do stay in the same chamber group the whole time, unless they're staying for the full session. For between session 1 and session 2, we switch everything up. So they would most likely be in the same chamber group, or sorry, a different one second session, unless all the same kids were staying and they came to us and they said, we really want to stay in the same group, please keep us together, which sometimes happens, but usually it's different. But anyway, thank you so much, Ella. This was wonderful. And thank you everyone who stayed and came.
Yes, thank you so much for everyone for coming and for your wonderful questions. That was really great. So hope to see you at camp, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope to see you all at camp.
And I guess my last question is like, how do they contact you? Can they contact you at any time via email, phone, or?
Yeah, so if you go to our website is just www.encorecoda.com. And there are ways to contact us through there, but I also dropped my email address in the chat, which is Cara with a C at encorecoda.com. So feel free to reach out. We're a small business, so if you reach out to us, you will get to me pretty quickly. And I'm always happy to talk on the phone or meet over Zoom about camp.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your winter and spring, wherever you are located.
Yes.
And wonderful summers to come. Okay, bye everyone.
You too. Thank you, Ella. Bye everyone.